In this video, we're going to cover Retroarch installation on the dev mode side of Xbox Series X and S. The long-awaited 1.10 update for Retroarch has finally landed, and with it a slew of fixes that are desperately needed for Xbox Retroarch, including 4K output is now fixed, full USB loading, improved performance for a number of cores like Flycast, among many others. Because of the way things have changed with this program, so too do my tutorials. And as such, there are basically two fundamental ways of setting up Retroarch now. You can go with a near full USB setup, or you can still rely on the internal storage if you want to. I'm not relying on the internal storage as much these days, just because Microsoft updates kind of break some things about the internal storage, and I just don't want to rely on it anymore, especially after USB has become so usable. But basically, this tutorial is going to have two sections, a section for USB installs, and a section for internal SSD installs. Now, before we get started, there are a couple things we are going to need. The first of which being an Xbox Series X or S console for which these tutorials are made. These tutorial steps will also work on Xbox Ones, but I am not specifically covering Xbox One systems. Second, you will need a computing device of some kind to do the Retroarch install. You need access to a web browser to access the device portal and install the program through that. And third, if you want to do a USB install, you will need a USB drive of any variety, formatted to NTFS, and we're going to show some extra steps there to get basically instantaneous loading from USB. But we'll cover that when we get to it in the video. Now that step might require a Windows PC. I don't know how to handle security settings on Mac OS or Linux, so I can't help you there. So that part will be Windows specific. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start on the Xbox side of things. So load up your Xbox Series S or Series X, and once you're on the dashboard, you can press the Y button on your Xbox controller, and that will bring up a search menu. Go ahead and type in dev mode, and you will get this dev mode activation box here. And for the love of everything that's good, if you are on an Xbox Series X or S, choose the one with the green background that has an Xbox Series X or S on it, and not the one with an Xbox One, otherwise it will continually ask you to update your console when there are no updates. The program is only about 100 megabytes, so it shouldn't take too long to install, but for some reason, the beginning of the download does take a minute before it really gets going, so I'm just leaving it all real time here for you. And now that that's downloaded, go ahead and open it. So you're going to get these welcome pages talking about welcoming you to the developer program and blah, blah, blah. Don't really care. So just go ahead and click next through all of these, and you will be greeted with a screen that has a code on it that looks something like this. Now, this code is used to register your Xbox console to your developer account, so you do need to have a developer mode license. It costs $20, and we are going to go to the website listed here to get this all set up. Over on your computer, type in that web address that you just saw on your Xbox. So https://aka.ms/activate Xbox. And when you press enter, it will bring you to the Microsoft partner page if you're already signed into an Xbox Live account, or a Microsoft account rather. So I'm already logged in, so it just brought me to this. You might need to log in for this to show up. From here, go ahead and scroll down to the developer programs, and there is a Windows and Xbox section here, also RipMixer. And yeah, Windows and Xbox, click Get Started, and it'll bring you to this new page. Get started with Windows apps. So we're going to click sign up now and go ahead and fill out all of this registration and account info. So it's going to ask you for your name, address, and payment options. So you are an individual, so you're going to be paying $19 to get this activated. So go ahead, fill all this out, get it set up. I'm just going to go ahead and skip past this part so you don't see all my personal info. After you finish your registration and payment, you will get a registration confirmation and be brought to your Microsoft developer dashboard here. From here, go ahead and type in that https://aka.ms/activate Xbox web address again. This will bring you to your Manage Xbox One Consoles tab where you can add in your Xbox Series X. So over on the right is a plus button. Click on that, enter activation code, and type in the code that appears on your Xbox. If you took a long time during registration like I did, when you enter the code, it might give you an error that it is no longer valid, like this. And that's fine. Just go ahead and refresh the page and refresh the page on your Xbox. Now do it again, enter activation code, and type in your new code. And your Xbox is now registered on your developer account. And you could go ahead and rename this if you want to. It doesn't have a name by default, so you could just add one if you feel so inclined. You don't have to. I just went ahead and did it anyway. And save when you're done. Ta-da! Your Xbox is all set up on your developer account and is ready to be switched into dev mode. So back over on the Xbox, you will see that the code page has changed over to this switch to developer mode page. So switch and restart and wait for it to reboot. After it finishes rebooting, you will be brought to the Xbox dev menu here, and there's quite an interesting look to this, but that's okay. If it asks you for advanced video features, go ahead and enable them. That way you just have your maximum display resolution set by default. Next, you want to make sure that your Xbox is connected to your network. If you're using Ethernet like I am, it's connected automatically, so you're good to go. But if it's not, you need to go down into Settings, launch your settings, go into your network settings, and then go back in and set up your wireless network as you need. Again, mine is connected through Ethernet, so I don't have to do this, but you need to make sure that your Xbox is connected to your network. Once that's finished, we need to set up our remote access settings. So for most of you, that's probably going to be down in the bottom right. I actually got rid of my test accounts page up here in the upper right. That way remote access is appearing up here, but just find your remote access settings, go into it, make sure that you enable the Xbox device portal with this handy dandy checkbox here. And then you're going to need to set up authentication, so check this box to require authentication. For whatever reason, I have not been able to get this to work without it, and a lot of you in the comment sections have said you have not been able to get this to work without it, so turn on require authentication, and then set a username and password in here. And once that's done, you can go ahead and close out of the remote access tab. But now that we are booted into dev mode, we have our remote access portal settings in place. Let's switch over to our computing device and get the required files we need to install. So Retroarch, SafeExit, and Durango Ftp. So first up, head over to retroarch.com and click on the download page. From here, just scroll down until you find Xbox Series /1 here, and we're going to hit the download button. And along with that, we need to download the Visual Studio Runtime libraries, so download those as well. Next, we're going to download Durango Ftp. We're going to add Durango Ftp to the setup tutorial this time because it makes it easier for people on Linux and Mac compared to my previous tutorials, so we're jumping on board with Durango Ftp. So links to everything will be in the description below as always, but you're going to head over to the Durango Ftp GitHub page here and just download the latest release. And last up, we're going to download SafeExit, so that way we can switch back and forth between dev mode and retail mode much easier. So link to this will be in the description below again, but just download it. And once you have everything downloaded, Retroarch's already good to go, but we need to extract Safe Exit and Durango Ftp, so they're in zip format, so you can use basically any program to do this. I just use 7-zip and tell it to extract them to their own folders. And there we go. Don't need those anymore. Alright, but now that you have all the programs that you're going to install, this is where you need to decide if you're going to be doing a USB-focused install or an internal SSD-focused install, because if you're doing USB, you don't have to expand dev mode storage anymore, so there's no real reason to do it, and you can save yourself space on the retail side of your Xbox to install more Series X and S games. If you still want to have a more internal SSD-focused install, you will need to expand your dev mode storage, which we will cover in a minute. So we're going to just start off with a USB-focused install. So to get started with installing these programs, take a peek over back at your Xbox and look at the remote access panel that you have here on the dev mode home screen. You'll see that it has an IP address, so we're basically just going to type that into a web browser. Again, a web browser, so you could do this on phones, Macs, Chromebooks, doesn't really matter. This is all through the internet here. So open up a web browser. I typically have had the most success using Microsoft Edge. Other browsers seem to have issues at times, but other people have had issues with Edge. So, I mean, just try your browser. If it doesn't work right, switch over to another one, and you should find success. But we're going to type in that remote access URL that it gave us there on the dev mode home screen. So, HTTPS. And you'll get a pop-up here saying that the connection isn't private, so you just need to click on Advance and tell it to continue anyway. And then it's going to ask you for that username and password that you entered in the remote access settings. And once you've successfully logged in, you should be on your home screen of your Xbox device portal for your Xbox Series X and S, and this is where we will begin installing some stuff. So first up, we're going to go up to My Games and Apps here, and we're going to click on Add. We're going to tell it to choose the file. Navigate to the folder that you have downloaded Retroarch and your other programs to, so we're going to choose to install Retroarch. Click Next. It's going to ask you for the dependency files. This is that Microsoft VClib file here. And once you have that selected, just click on Start. And the installation is now complete. After that install is complete, we're going to go ahead and install the other ones, but before we do, just go ahead and refresh your device portal page. That seems to help with adding dependency files for the other stuff. So now we're just going to go back into Add, and we're going to go to Durango Ftp, Universal FTP Server. So Universal FTP Server AppX Bundle, that's what we're going to choose there. Then we're going to click on Next. It's going to ask us for dependency files. And there's a nice dependencies folder here. And we are looking for the x64 folder. And we're going to select each and every one of these files that's in here. So we're going to just start at the top. And work our way down until all three have appeared down here and tell it to start. And now same deal again for our last one. Just refresh the page after you get that installed. Go back into Add, Safe Exit, and then Dependency Files. Same deal. Choose all three. And tell it to start. And once you have all three of those programs installed, we are done with the Xbox device portal. We don't need this page up anymore. And now let's go ahead and get our USB drive prepped to be used on the Xbox version of Retroarch here. So you can plug in any USB device, doesn't really matter. We just need to make sure that it is formatted in NTFS format. So file system NTFS. If you need to figure out how to do that, you can just right click on it in Windows, Format, choose NTFS. And yeah, that whole process. But once you have it formatted, you could just put all of the games that you're going to use for Retroarch on it. So I've already got all my games transferred over because it takes forever and I don't want to wait for it again. So I have all of my systems that I cover here ready to go. So PlayStation 2 games, even games over 4 gigs, work from USB now with the setup I'm about to show you. But games like Super Smash Bros. Brawl work from USB. Like, it's awesome. But anyway, once you have your drive formatted to NTFS, you have your games copied over to it. Again, these steps are specific to Windows users. I don't know how to do this on a Mac or a Linux, so can't help you with that, unfortunately. But Windows users, right-click on your drive, go to Properties, click on the Security tab here, and we're going to click on this Advanced button here. We're going to click on Add, select a principal, Advanced, Find Now, and we're looking for the one that says All Application Packages, and press OK. Press OK again, and we're going to give it full control, and we're going to make sure this applies to this folder, subfolders, and files. And once you have all of these options set, press OK. And finally, we're going to click on Replace All Child Object Permission Entries with Inheritable Permission Entries from this object. And once that's set, we're going to hit Apply. And it's going to come up with a pop-up, Replace Explicitly Defined Permissions, la la la, yes. So you might get an error about the system volume information one, just hit Continue. And once it's done, your USB drive is now set for instantaneous loading, well, near instantaneous loading, within the Xbox version of Retroarch. Alright, now that we got our USB drive ready, we're going to head back over to the Xbox for a second and prep Retroarch so we can get our BIOS files installed. Alright, so over on your Xbox, now that we've got everything installed, there's a little bit of prep work. So first thing we're going to do is head down to Durango Ftp. We're going to press our back button, select button. I don't like that they renamed these buttons, but it's going to bring up this menu here that shows us launch, uninstall, launch with parameters, and view details. We are interested in viewing the details. We are going to change this from an app to a game. And we're going to do the same thing with Retroarch. We're going to change that from an app to a game. So again, press the back button, bring up the menu, view details, change it from an app to a game. Once you have both of those set, I like to restart the console. People say it's not necessary, but I like to do it anyway. It's not like rebooting it takes very long, so no harm, no foul. Alright, and now that the console is restarted, you can just go over to these two programs again, press the back button, view details, make sure they are still set to a game, and that way you know it took effect. So, we're going to go ahead and boot into Retroarch for the first time. You will be asked to sign into the Xbox Live account you bought dev mode with here if you haven't done so already. You need to boot into Retroarch at least once, otherwise the folders we need later might not be there. Go into the online updater, and we're going to tell it to update the assets so that way it doesn't look so 8-bit. There we go. And while we're here, we're also going to update the core info files, controller profiles. If you want to do the cheats, you can. I don't personally care for them, so that's a personal choice. But update the databases, can update the overlays, and you can also update shaders. But once you have all of that stuff updated and downloaded, just go ahead and back out. And next, we're going to go over to settings. We're going to start in the video tab here. So one of the nice things about the new version of Retroarch is that it automatically sets your display resolution to whatever the monitor you have connected to it and the output setting you have selected. So full 4K is finally here once again. But anyway, first thing we're going to do, we're going to go into the synchronization tab here and turn on automatic frame delay. So for those of you that are more susceptible to input latency, this ought to help you out. Next up in the scaling tab, if you want to turn on integer scaling, you could do so here. This will result in black bars around your screen depending on your display size, but it does ensure perfect pixel scaling for your games, and it's just a personal choice here. I like to use it, others don't, so you can decide. Options right there. Another option you can choose to enable is bilinear filtering if you want to have more of a blurred image. I don't personally like it, but again, personal preference, the option's here. But once you have these options set, you can back out. And the next thing we're going to do is go down to input, and we're going to set up a hotkey for menu toggle controller combo. This lets you get into your quick menu within Retroarch when you're playing games. There's a lot of options to choose from here. I like to use hold down start for 2 seconds personally. Once you have that set, go ahead and back out of all of that. Next, we're going to head all the way down here to user interface. I went a little too far there. And we're going to turn off some menu item visibilities because they could cause issues within Retroarch. So the first thing we're going to do is kill this Explore tab. It breaks things. It just, no, go away. I also don't use favorites, images, or music, so this really cleans up the look of Retroarch and just gets me to my playlist quicker, so I really enjoy it. But once you have the options set the way you want, you can just back out. Then we're going to go back over to the left, go back up to main menu, go to the configuration file, and tell it to save the current configuration. And once you have all that set, you can just quit out of Retroarch. And now we are going to add our BIOS files to the Retroarch system folder, so that way we can play every system we'd like. I'm going to go into more detail on specifics of these files and stuff in the individual core videos. This is more of a broad overview just to help get you started. So Durango Ftp is what we want to launch into next. Now, here on Durango Ftp, you will see that we have 30 gigs of free space. Well, 29.5 gigs out of 30 gigs free. Since we're going to be running most everything from USB, other than save files and BIOS files, like that really doesn't matter anymore. It used to matter a lot when we were trying to store PS2 ISOs within it, and that's why we'd use the S drive. But now that everything runs from USB, it's not a big deal. But anyway, make sure that Allow Anonymous is still checked, and we're going to start the FTP server. And you will see that there are a number of different IP addresses under the addresses of this device section here. So once the FTP server has started, we are going to head back over to a computing device of some sort. This can be phones, Mac, Linux, Windows, doesn't matter. So I have a folder on my Dropbox that has a bunch of different folders that you will need to run certain systems like PSP and Dolphin, as well as just some BIOS files that I'm able to share like NeoCD. But I also have a Final Burn Neo high score DAT file here, and a pre-made PCSX2 folder. It doesn't come with any BIOS files because it's illegal to share that stuff, and I don't do that, so unfortunately you will need to supply your own there. But you can download this folder to give you just quick access to some files that you're going to need. Again, links will be in the description. But once you have sourced all of the BIOS files that you're going to place in your Retroarch system folder, again, I'm going to go into specifics in the individual core videos. This is just more of a broad overview to start us off with. But from here, we're going to open up an FTP client, or if you're on Windows like I am, there's actually a really nice shortcut here using the File Explorer. You can just go up here and type in FTP and then Xbox and press enter, and it will bring you into your Xbox drive structure. So we're going to go into the local folder, and we're going to find our Retroarch folder, local state, and now system folder, and this is where we're going to drag all of our BIOS files. So, bam. And just give it a bit to do the transfer. Once that file transfer has completed, we are basically done with everything we need on the computer at this time. So you can just close out of everything, unplug your USB drive, and hook it up to your Xbox. So back over on the Xbox, you can stop the FTP server now. We are done with it, and we can just go ahead and quit out of Durango. And now I'm going to plug in my USB drive real quick. And since I've already been using this drive on my Xbox, it's popped up, it is ready to go. But if this is a new drive or you just newly formatted it to NTFS, you will get a pop-up asking you to format it as Xbox storage or media storage. Choose media. But once that has popped up, go ahead and boot back into Retroarch. So, first thing you'll notice, it's a lot cleaner here on the left side since I disabled all those extra tabs. And now that we also have those BIOS files transferred, we can go in and begin loading up content. So on dev mode, USB drives typically show up under the E drive. And then I have my games stored in a game subfolder, and there they all are. So just a quick demonstration here for all of you on how quick things load up now. Gonna go into my PS2 games folder, and we're gonna load up Metal Gear Solid 3 for PS2. A near 4.5 gig game here. And I'm just gonna tell it to load up under PCSX2. And there we go. It has already booted up. That was all done in real time. That is just so freaking awesome. And that's going to do it as far as basic USB focus setup is concerned. We've got everything good to go, and we can begin enjoying our games. Now again, I'm going to be covering each individual core in more specifics in separate videos. This is just your basic setup overview. So, BIOS files, game types, settings, that's all going to be handled in separate videos. And for PS2 in particular, we do have access to a software renderer now, so I'm going to be covering that in a specific PS2 video as well. Now let's go ahead and talk about setting up a pure SSD install of Retroarch under dev mode here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is press your start button, or menu button, whatever the frick they call it now, it's a start button. And we're going to go down to manage dev storage. By default, dev mode is set to 5 gigs of internal storage. Now, you will need to make sure you have at least 50 gigs free on the retail side if you want to expand storage at all. So I have about 300 gigs free on retail, and that gives me 258 gigs of usable space here on dev mode. But I'm just going to go ahead and crank this all the way up to a full 200 gigs because I'm going to put everything I have on the SSD. And I'm going to tell it to start, and it's going to say, hey, if you change the size, we're going to delete everything and reboot. Yes. That's what we want. So just give it a bit to reboot and adjust the settings. All right, and now that the reboot is complete, we can press the start button again, manage dev storage, and see that it took effect. So now we are ready to begin installing our programs that we downloaded earlier. So take notice of that remote access URL there and head over to your computing device. We're going to open up a web browser. Edge typically gives me the best success rate, so if you don't have success with your current browser, just try switching and it should help you out. But we're going to type in that URL that we just had, so https and press enter. And you will get a pop-up here saying that your connection isn't private. Just go ahead and click on advanced and tell it to continue anyway. And then it'll ask you for your username and password that you set up under the remote access settings. So type those in, and once it's done, you'll be brought to your Xbox device portal homepage here. And this is where we're going to begin installing Retroarch and our other 2 programs. So we're going to go over to the add button here under my games and apps. We're going to choose the file. Navigate to where you have your files downloaded to, so we're just going to choose Retroarch here. Next we need to add dependencies, so choose File and select the dependency file. And once that's been selected, just click on Start and it will install Retroarch onto your dev mode. And once that install has finished, go ahead and refresh your browser before trying to install the next program. It typically tends to help when selecting the dependency files. So, just going to go back into Add, and we're going to add Durango Ftp, so Universal FTP Server, AppX Bundle. Next, choose Dependencies. There's a dependency folder here in the download. We're looking for the x64 folder, and we need to choose all 3 of these files, so just start at the top and work your way down. You can also drag and drop these, but I have more success choosing them manually, personally, so whatever you prefer. And once all 3 are selected, click on Start. And once that's finished, just click on Done. And once again, refresh, and then click on Add. Choose File. And we're going to install Safe Exit here. So next, we're going to choose the dependency files in the dependencies folder. Again, there are 3 of them, so just select each one. And tell it to start. And there we go. Once we have all three of those installed, we are done with our Xbox device portal. We don't need it anymore for this project. Unless you want to install other things like DuckStation and Flycast Standalone, but you know how to get here now. Alright, so over on the Xbox, we are going to do a few things to get set up. First thing we're going to do, we're going to go down to Durango Ftp, press the back button, or view button on our... It's back button, I hate this. Press that button, it'll bring up this menu here, and we are going to go down to view details. And we're going to change it from an app to a game. And then we're going to do the same thing with Retroarch. Back button, view details, change it from an app to a game. Once those have both been changed, go up here and restart your console. People have said this isn't necessary. I still prefer to do it just to be safe, and you can try either method, I guess. It's not like it takes too long to restart an Xbox Series X, so why not? Alright, and now that the Xbox has finished rebooting, just go down and confirm that those are still set to a game before we begin. Good, they are. Alright, so go ahead and boot into Retroarch for the first time. Alright, first thing we're going to do, we're going to go down to the online updater, and we're going to tell it to update the assets so things don't look so 8-bit. Alright, perfect. Next, we're going to update our core info files, controller profiles, you can download cheats here if you'd like, update databases, and you can update your overlays and your shaders. And once all of those have been updated, we're just going to go ahead and back out. And we're going to do some initial setup here real quick. So first things first, go left, go down to settings, and we're going to go into the video tab here. First of all, make note that Retroarch does automatically set your display resolution depending on what your Xbox output is set at, and it's awesome. We have true 4K back. But anyway, head down to scaling, and in this tab you can turn on integer scaling if you so choose. This will result in black borders around the screen on certain cores and resolutions, so it's not a look many prefer, but I really like it. I like having the proper pixel scaling. So you can turn this on if you so choose. But the option we're most interested in is under synchronization here. Head down to automatic frame delay and turn this option on. This will help for those of you that are more susceptible to input lag. Once both options are set, you can also turn on Bilinear Filtering if you want to blur your output image a bit. I don't like it personally, but the option's here if you so choose. Next, we're going to go down to Input, find the Hotkeys tab, and we're going to assign a menu toggle controller combo. So press A on this, and you'll see there are a bunch of options available. I like holding down Start for 2 seconds. Once that option is set, back out, and we're going to go down to User Interface, and we're going to get rid of some menu item visibility options here to help make Retroarch look cleaner, as well as eliminate a menu item that causes crashing. So we're going to go down here to Show Explore and kill it. And then you could also disable other options that you don't use. So I don't use favorites, images, music, so getting rid of all those. And once that's done, you can back out once again. Now head back over to the left, up to Main Menu, and go down to Configuration File, and tell it to save the current configuration. And now we're just going to go ahead and quit out of Retroarch. Now that Retroarch is ready to accept our files, we're going to head over to Durango Ftp. So make sure Allow Anonymous is ticked, and we're going to tell it to start. Now if you look just to the right of this start button, there is an addresses of this device section, which has a bunch of different options available for you to use for your FTP programs to access the Xbox. So heading back over to our computing device, this could be phones, tablets, iOS, Linux, Chromebook, Windows, doesn't matter. You just need to be able to FTP into your Xbox. So for Windows users, a quick example of how to do this without any additional programs if you don't want to. Depending on your network settings, you can just type FTP Xbox. And that gives us access to our Xbox's internal storage. So head into your local folder, find your Retroarch folder, go into the local state folder, and find your system folder. We're going to copy our BIOS files first. So head into here. Now I'm going to go into more specifics on BIOS files in individual core videos, so don't worry if you don't understand the BIOS files yet. We're going to go in more detail on those in separate videos. This is just a broad overview. But you can grab your BIOS files and copy them right into that Retroarch system folder. Now, I do have a pre-made set of folders that you can put in your system folder. So for PSP, Dolphin, Final Burn Neo, Neo Geo CD, these are all good to go. This will let you play your PSP games with fonts. Dolphin will let you play Mario Kart and stuff. Neo CD BIOS is freeware. I have a PACSX2 folder structure here as well, but you will need to supply your own BIOS files to put into it. But links to all this stuff will be in the description below as always. And once your BIOS files have finished transferring over, we could just go ahead and back out a few folders here and go back into our overall folder structure. And from here, we're going to look into the S drive here, Program Files, Windows Apps, and we're going to find our Retroarch folder. And we're going to look for the one that has x64 at the end, so x64. And we're going to go in there. And we're going to make a new folder. And we're going to name it Games. Once that folder's created, go ahead and go into it. And now you can transfer over all of your games that you are going to be using on Retroarch. And if you have a lot of games, this might take a while. Alright, and now that that insanely long transfer is completed, we are done with everything on the PC side and can close out of everything and head back over to our Xbox. So, over on the Xbox, we just need to stop our Durango Ftp server, and you'll notice that the local app data storage is still showing us 29.4 gigs out of 30 gigs are free. That's because we're saving our games to the S drive where it won't interfere with that 30 gig limit. But anyway, go ahead and shut out of Durango and boot back into Retroarch. And from here, we're free to begin loading up our content. So head down to S, Program Files, Windows Apps, find your Retroarch folder. It's the one with the x64 at the end. That games folder you created, and you are free to begin loading up your games. If for whatever reason your S drive is empty, you will find out that the S drive is a working directory for the D drive here. So you can go into Development Files, Windows Apps, find your Retroarch folder, again the one with x64 at the end, go into your Games folder, and then you can begin loading up games. So just a quick demonstration on how fast games load from the internal SSD. We're going to load up Metal Gear Solid 3 here, 4.5 gig game, under PCSX2, and there we go, it's already good to go. And there we go, those are the basic steps to getting all of your games stored onto your internal SSD to use with the Xbox Series X and S version of Retroarch under dev mode. Again, we will go over more core specific things in separate videos, so if you have any questions pertaining to those cores, look in my Retroarch playlist, find the video for the core in question, if it exists, and take a look at it where we'll go over the settings, BIOS files, and game formats, and various other things. Now, say you're done playing Retroarch and want to go back to the retail side of your Xbox. To do so, just go down to Safe Exit and press A. And your console will reboot back into retail mode. And to get back into dev mode, just go back into the dev kit activation program and switch and restart. But that's going to do it for today's tutorial. A lot longer this time since we covered two different setup methods with USB and internal SSD. But hopefully this new setup method will prove to be a lot easier for a lot of you that aren't on Windows operating systems, as well as make it easier to back up files and switch over to newer versions of Retroarch when they release. As always, if you happen to have any questions on the setup process, feel free to ask in the comment section below, and I will do my best to try to help you out. Going forward, I personally will be sticking with a USB-only install, as it is just far more convenient. You don't have to worry about managing your games as much. Personal choice, and I wanted you all to have the option of either method. And once again, big shout out to every single contributor of the Xbox version of Retroarch. Y'all have made such amazing improvements over the last year and just brought joy to countless people that have really enjoyed getting into emulation through it. But that's going to do it for this one. So thank you so much as always for watching. It means the world to me that these tutorials can help you out in getting your emulation project set up on Xbox Series X and S. Now, I do have a couple of favors to ask of you here at the end. If you haven't done so already, please hit that like or dislike button, just depending on how much you like today's video. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that sub button so you can see when new videos go live on the channel. Lots of content to come. Love to have you along for the ride. For anyone more interested in helping support the channel and keep it running, you could also check out that join button here on YouTube or the Patreon link that will appear in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. A little goes a long way to keeping this place up and running and bringing more content just like this to all of you. But until next time, my wonderful internet peeps, you all stay awesome, keep on gaming, and we will see you back next video.